popular app idea to use Power Apps for is an approval workflow. And a lot of times people think about Power Automate flow to handle that,
Right.
but we're going to do it mostly in Power Apps. So what do you think of that, Kurt and Mark?
I love it. I like the idea of seeing if we can't get things going out from the Power App part of it instead of the Power Automate part of it. See,
Yeah,
how much of this can we get done in Power Apps versus having to put everything in Power Automate, right?
right. So this was actually a workshop that we started yesterday afternoon. And something that Kurt tells me is I can't do anything simple. It usually takes a while. I'm like, oh, we got to do this. Oh, we got to do this, right? So we got quite a bit done, and but I'd like to sort of talk about this because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are interested in doing an approval workflow inside of Power Apps
Yep.
and how you do that. Not necessarily using the Power Automate work flows. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And we already have some of the app sort of formed. So let me move things around a little bit and we'll show you what we have. So these are definite must-haves in the app. We want to be able to request something. Okay. I want this to be flexible. There's going to be an approval tree or a list of approvals, and it could be just one step. It could be 10 steps. And of course, the app needs to send out email notifications along the way. And the application needs to have deep linking as a feature. So if an email notification goes out and there's a link back to the app, then we want to link directly to that record, directly to the screen they should go to either approve or deny. Now, something that a lot of the students that signed up for the workshop said they really would like is have this communication log or a chat. Okay, so I've got that in there, but that's going to be almost like a must-have just based on their feedback of what they wanted to do. And so here is the app, and if I can move us around a little bit. I'm going to run this app that we have so far. Now we use the modern control on the side as a menu item. Okay. And here are all the requests. So we're going to make this into some type of a dashboard so people can look at all the requests, either that they've submitted or ones that they need to approve. Okay. And we could filter this result set by using these tabs here at the top. And we haven't quite wired that up yet. So we'll be jumping into that this application today and adding to this. And then we also have a follow-up session on Monday for those that attended the workshop, and we'll be finishing things up and providing support for those that were in that. But I thought everybody would like to see this type of use case, this type of scenario. And Kurt, what do you think? Usually you have a lot to say.
Yeah,
I
mean, I think you're spot on with everything you're saying. I also just want to say that, to do the workshop justice, I just feel like we're doing a good job in here, kind of going through some of the details on that to make sure that it's all done right,
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like that idea too. Spend a little bit more time in it.
Absolutely. So let me show you guys what this looks like. We either can create a new request. There's a little button here, or we can edit a request. So I'm going to edit a request. This Darren guy, he says, hey, I need a laptop. And the person that needs to approve it is somebody with the same last name. Her name's Nicole. And so we've got a gallery over here that will show all the different steps of the approval process. Okay.
Now, I know we talked about it, but I can't remember if were we going to be able to allow this so that a person could make a request in behalf of somebody else? Were we going to set it up like that too?
Yes. So that's set up. So if I go back home, I'm also going to hit F11, see if I can get any more screen real estate, maybe a little more there. If we click on new, what I could do is go in here and say, well, I'm going to take Darren out and I want to search for Kurt. There's Kurt.
Okay.
So the request subject. Okay, so we actually need to rename this or put different text in this label here because I just copied and pasted that from up there.
You were probably talking to me at that time when you put that in there.
So I'll say person affected. Okay. And so I'll submit this request for you. I'll say Kurt needs a larger office and he's got too many plants in his current small office.
Yeah.
He's got too many monitors.
Got too many monitors.
All right. So I'll submit this. Let's see what happens here. We see champagne bubbles at the top.
Tiny
And
bubbles.
it's still going. It's still going. Okay. It looks like it ended there. All right. So let's go take a look at what we have in this little submit button. Okay. There's probably quite a bit in here. So I'm going to go into the on select and we'll open this up. Now, that may not be big enough. So I'm going to go back and probably zoom in a little bit here so everybody can see the code. All right. That's probably too much. Let me back out a little more. There we go. So the first thing that we do, we check to see the person affected, whoever we selected. So it's going to default to me because I'm the current user. But if I was filling out this ticket for you, then you're in there, Kurt. So I check to see if you're in app users because there's a chance you may not be. Okay. Now, if I go into the data source here and go into app users, so I'm using Dataverse for this. I know many of you always use SharePoint. I like the idea of being able to package this up in a solution package. So that's why I went with Dataverse this time around. So it looks like you're in here, Kurt. And let's go look and see on the when you were created on. I don't think you were in there yesterday. Yeah.
Now, one of the questions I had, we were talking about the 365 users connector yesterday, and we have the search. We were doing the search users, and in that collection that it brings back, it has an ID. Is that ID the same as the Entra ID that's in our user dot function? Do you know, or does that make sense? What I just asked?
No, could you repeat that?
Okay, so when you
Sorry.
return, when you do a search in the Office 365 connector, you know how you got the search users?
Yeah.
Okay, it returns a collection. It returns a record or a table of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that table of stuff, there is an ID field in there. That ID is a GUID. Is that GUID the same as when you do the user dot function or the user function dot entra ID? Is that the same ID?
I believe so. I believe so. And we could test that. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go into default selected items. Okay. So this is where the magic happened for the combo box that we're using. Okay. And we're looking at we're exactly where we're using the ID. Do you remember? Or was it in that search, the submit button?
Well, you were just storing the Entra ID. I just saw the ID in there, and I was just wondering if it was the same one because I would like to use that ID for that if we can.
Yeah. So if we look at this ID, okay,
Yeah.
let's check this out. Let's get to the bottom of that.
Let's get to the bottom of it there.
Bring this down here. And it looks like a GUID.
See, it's just little inconsistencies like that drive me crazy because you know you call it ID everywhere. That way we know it is. That's what it is. But now you call it Entra ID makes me think it's
no,
it's different.
No, Kurt, look at that.
Different. Well, I'm glad I asked. I wasn't going to bother you with it today, but because I know we got a lot to do, but I thought maybe that's important. Okay.
That is important.
Okay.
Wow, you just uncovered. Thankfully, you mentioned that, guys. The best time to find a bug was yesterday. The next best time is as soon as possible.
Best time was yesterday.
Before you wrote the bug in. So I just want to give a shout out to you guys here live. I see a lot of people saying good morning. And we have a few panelists that aren't showing their videos. So I'll respect their privacy and keep them off the screen. But if you guys have anything to say, just show your face or let us know in the private chat, and we'll let you on if you want to talk about anything. So that's really interesting, Kurt. So now what I want to do.
Yeah, it changes a lot of things, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I can't put that in the Entra ID, can I?
No, we're just going to have to store. We're going to have to treat that Entra ID like it's just something different. And we're just going to have to keep the ID in there.
Yeah. So if I say, so that's just ID.
Yeah.
I wish they would have an Entra ID here.
Yeah.
You know?
So maybe really for our solution, it's just a matter of so that we're not screwing up, maybe just changing that field name from Entra ID to ID. Yeah. Of course, I hate changing field names once you create them.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it's SharePoint. You definitely don't want to rename a column if you're using SharePoint, right?
Yeah, just delete it and start it over, especially if you don't have a lot of data in there.
Yeah.
If you got some data in there, well, learn from the burn,
Learn from the burn. Well, I wonder, Kurt, this is the only type of material you'll get on a live stream. I wonder if we have a Entra anything.
Well, we might. You know what? Now that you brought that up, we might.
Microsoft Entra IDs. There's a Dataverse table with that.
Okay, maybe it connects. Maybe it's a mapping table, huh? Maybe it takes the ID and maps it to the Entra ID. But I guess I'm just not sure. What's the point of all this? So you have a global ID, and then you have an Entra ID, which is also a global ID. What's the point? What are we doing here?
What is the point? I want to bring and look at this Microsoft Entra ID. Okay, so this does not require a premium connector, so that's good. I'm going to bring this over.
Okay.
Let's see what's going on here.
So maybe we can enter an ID, and then it gives us the Entra ID. Maybe.
Yeah. Because I sort of want it to be. I do want to use the Entra ID because I want to be able to search. Or do a lookup within my user table based on the current user's Entra ID, right?
Right. And I guess it lends to me that Entra ID would be and we never talked about this, but in my mind, I just scoped that Entra ID to the current corporation that we're in, whatever tenant we're working with, right? In that tenant. So for instance, you have a couple of tenants. You have a niece.us and you have a powerlabs.us. Or is that powerlabs.co? I can't remember anymore. But it's but you have two tenants.
I got 4 tenants.
Okay, so you have 4 tenants show off. So I'm thinking that Entra ID would be specific to each one of those tenants.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. And then the ID would be like your Enter ID, where it would be just universal everywhere.
See, the thing is, this does hit Azure AD. At least that's how I've understood it. Okay. So, and they've renamed things. They're going from Azure AD to Entra.
Okay.
And we have an ID that we've had before. And then this user function brought in this Entra ID. And they're trying to rename Azure AD to Entra.
Okay. So
it's not
about names.
Hmm?
This is more about names than it is about functionality then, probably, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, the IDs are different, and the IDs should be based on the tenant, the user in the tenant.
Right. So, and I guess I just assumed that Darren Neese when I look up Darren Neese and that ID, that's going to be universal to any mic. That's your Microsoft ID for Darren Neese. Now, whenever Darren Neese logs in, he's got that ID associated with him.
But for what tenant?
Well, I would associate that with every tenant, and then there would be a different ID for the tenant. That way they could track Darren Neese at his activity no matter where he goes, because that's what happens around here now.
Kurt, if you ran for office, I'd vote for you because you make sense to me. I don't think that's how Microsoft would
You know what?
Patty.
You know what I like about Darren is that he's the only person in my entire life that's ever said that to me.
Really? I drink the Kurt Kool-Aid.
Now, Karen Branson just mentioned something in private chat. She says, if you are syncing on-premise users, they have an ID grid, and cloud users have the Entra ID. Maybe that is why they are different.
All right.
Okay, now people pay big money for this.
Kurt just interrupted Kurt. Go ahead, Kurt.
I did that. That's so rude. But Karen, I just don't know if I understand what you just said there. I don't. Sometimes I gotta break out crayons here and draw pictures because I just don't see. Okay, so syncing on-prem users. Okay, so on-prem versus cloud.
I'm going to paste this over the chat so everybody can see this, and I'll put up on the screen.
I guess that's kind of what I was saying in a way, right? But it's different. I was thinking in a tenant, but you're saying on-prem users would be, they have an ID grid.
Yeah, back before the cloud, people used to have, you remember Novell Network and all that stuff?
Yeah. Back when it was decent. Yeah.
When they went from Windows NT to Windows 2000, they, I guess it was the same thing with NT. They just started renaming. They always rename stuff after a few years, right? So they created this thing called Active Directory, and it was a directory of network objects. You had users, computers, you had groups, you had printers, whatever, right?
Yep.
And you had a central server that was the domain controller. And these days, you got a large organization. You might have a whole cluster of domain controllers across the world, But let's just say we're a medium-sized organization, and even before the cloud came around, so we've been in business for, let's say, 20 years, and we've had an on-premise Active Directory, and we still run it. And then we start doing a bunch of cloud stuff, like we got Power Apps and all kinds of stuff, right? I believe the IDs that are created in the cloud, the GUIDs, everything has a GUID. And then the domain controller can assign a GUID for an ID in the local, but up in the cloud, it could be different.
Okay.
So I think that might be what I should say in there.
I think I'm seeing that. Is that what you were saying, Karen? Because I think that sounds right. Okay. I'm sure glad you guys could help me out, get me schooled up on this stuff, man. Because boy, I tell you what, all this is confusing me sometimes.
All we got to do is mention Clipper, Sybase, and Novell Network, and you come alive. I like it.
Yeah, I'm with you then. I guess I'm just now. I keep trying to warm up to Microsoft, but in the back of my head says, "Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it."
You've been fighting that ever since I knew you, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so look at this.
Too much Big Brother for me. Okay.
All right, so we brought in this connector, Microsoft Entra ID. Okay, so look at this. So I'm tying into that connector to say get user. Okay. Now, it wants an ID. What ID does it want?
I bet it's the one that you get from your search users.
You think so?
I think so.
Now, I think what might be best. Now, okay, this connector is called Microsoft Entra ID.
Yes.
So the only Entra ID that I've dealt with in Power Apps is hanging off this user object, and I can get at it. But I'm not looking for myself. I'm looking for Kurt, right?
No. Okay, but use the one in the search users function from the Microsoft 365. That one has an ID that's different, and I'll bet that's the one that you got to put in there. And it's going to return the Entra ID for that person.
We'll see.
I'm putting I'll bet my next paycheck on it. No, I'm not going to do that. Just kidding.
You get paid more than I do right now, Kurt. I'm just saying. This little corporation I run doesn't pay me hardly anything. All right, so kit user, it's already upset. Well, it's a label. A label can't display a record. It needs. So I'll say dot. Let's see what we have. Oh, now we can get at
ID. That one right there. That one.
Did it pull it up? Kurt, are you right?
I am. That's the Entra ID.
No, this. What is this? Oh, this is my ID.
Right. Darren's ID.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is where I got hung up.
Okay.
I thought this was
okay. Right.
What is going on here? Okay.
Boom. You owe me 2 paychecks.
We're like the Two Stooges.
We are. Thank God we got Karen and Patty here trying to keep us right.
Karen and Patty, what? You're probably shaking your head at us. I thought the ID from that and the Entra ID were separate. No, it's the same. I was comparing Kurt's ID to my ID. That's what was going on.
Oh my goodness.
But you know what, Kurt? I just learned, we posed the question. We sort of dug in a little bit. I mean, I'm using this connector.
This reminds me of last week's live stream when we had we were working with the modern control drop down and then the old drop down. And then we couldn't get it to work. Nothing was working. And then it was because we put the modern one on top of the other one and we were looking at the wrong one. This is what we do.
That's how the real world is. Either that or you can just mark it up to a couple dudes having a senior moment.
So we're going to start this off. We started this off by me being a genius because I asked the question and it was something different. But really, I wasn't a genius. It was the same.
But Kurt, you were right, though. You're not always right.
And you were too. We're all right here. And Karen was right. She had wisdom she brought to it. This is a good live stream here.
That. This is.
And Elvis is still king, so we're okay.
I thought Data was king. Rick says, I get sick one weekend and looks what happened. Everything falls apart.
Good Lord.
We have one objective, guys. Let's just have fun with this Power App stuff because learning software development isn't always fun and exciting, You know,
we can say the same thing about being a Chicago Cubs fan too, We just have one objective. It's just to have fun. That's what we're doing. We're here to have fun. We're not going to win anything. So we're just having fun. Yeah.
I'm sure you made somebody upset right there. You didn't make me upset because I'm a computer nerd. And
no, because everybody knows about how the Chicago Cubs roll. So
good morning, Shell. And Tony says, yeah, Two Stooges.
You weren't supposed to agree with that. You're supposed to say, no, you guys are really, really smart.
Okay. So it looks like my ID is just fine to putting that into
yes, your ID is just fine.
Okay, very good. So I think I would like to zoom out a little bit so we can look at more code at once. I'm going to go to 100 and I'll expand this so everybody sort of knows what's going on here. Okay. So we check to see if the person effect is in our table. If they're not, we put them in there. And that's really the only purpose.
Okay.
Right? And then we've got, put a little bit of character turn here. What are we doing here? We're checking to see if the approver, the person we're giving it over to right now that's Nicole. She's got to be the person that will need to approve the request. And I'm checking to see if she's in the table. If she's not, I'm going to add her. Then finally down here, what are we doing here? We do a patch on the approval steps. And we're going to put it into a variable so that later when we patch the request, we have that current step. Now, what's up with all of these steps, you might ask? Let me pull that up. Database diagrams here. Because this might make a lot of sense once we bring this up. Okay. Now we got lots of lines going on here. Lots of relationships. Okay. So request comes in that needs approval. Okay. So this is the table that's going to hold the requests. And then we have app users. So we got people's name, their full name, their email address, their Entra ID, their photo, and any notes. And each one of these three tables refers to app user. I'm using Dataverse. So we've got lookup columns pointing back. And the approval step is the whole approval process. So Nicole might look at it and say, I don't know. Let's go get the permission of someone else. And she could sort of throw it to someone else and like, hey, do you approve of this? Yes or no? So each step will have inside this approval step database table that will refer back to this request. And then we also have a current step lookup, which is the reference to the current one. Okay. And then we got a little chat that we're going to get to later on. So as somebody requests something and it's going through the different steps, all the people involved can have like a little chat on the side. It's like, hey, I could really use this laptop any day now, guys, and people can sort of chat and, okay. So I showed you guys that to sort of explain what's going on here. We went into approval steps and we added an approval step here, and we're just adding a new one. Okay. And then we finally patch the request. Does anybody have any questions? What's KC? Kansas City? Or is that a state? Kentucky?
No, it's Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Yeah. So
will that chat? Can we make that chat notify users when there is a chat posted?
Absolutely.
Nice. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah. So what my thought was, we'd have the request here in one column. Then we've got all the people that are involved in all the steps of the approval process. And then we'll have like a third column that will have the chat.
Perfect.
Now, Kurt, you typically have a lot to say. You don't have a lot to say this morning.
I'm just trying to keep up.
You're taking it all in?
Yeah. Well, I guess my design was going to be a little bit different, but so I'm trying to understand your design a little, and I think your design might be slick. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to just catch up and keep up.
Very good.
Now, I guess my question is going to be: you're going to keep each item if we can go ahead and jump ahead a little bit with the chat.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm thinking is if it was Kurt doing this every time, I would have a request ID associated with the chat, and it would be stored in a separate table, and I would have a record for every item that got entered. So if Karen starts chatting, then her ID and the request ID will be stored in that chat with what she said. Then Patty says something in the same request ID as another record. Now, when it comes to displaying it, I would display Karen's name, what she said, Patty's name, what she said, and I would have it all concatenated in a multi-line text box. Is that something like you were talking about doing?
You'd have all of what in a multi-line text box?
I would have Karen's. I would have each one with a char 13 concatenated together and then displayed in a multi-line text box.
I would sort of want it in a gallery, and each little chat we could either use a label or an HTML control where we could have like a little shadow or something. Of course, you can do that with a container as well. Kurt's not sure about that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of what's the benefit of each one.
Mm-hmm.
So gallery, you could display certain things. You maybe give them the capability of changing things in there, deleting the chat out of there. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to find my formulas. Here it is. Let's show you guys what we have in formulas. So here's our menu. We have 2 screens so far, and we have a little theme. Now, I wasn't using my Jumpstart kit because for those coming in on the workshop, I can't assume that they all have my Jumpstart kit. But I have a little debugging thing, and I'll set this to true because I've got some guidelines in here I think I will use. And I think what I'd like to do is have them sort of set up the layout for the screen. Okay. And let me put this in here. Make sure I do this right. Okay. And I'm going to clean up some of these controls that we really don't need. Okay. Now, what I have here on the second screen, I have a container. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move it to be up against these little guidelines, these rectangles. And I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to put this button at. I need to think about that a little bit, maybe. For now, I'm just going to put it over here, I think. Okay, so Mark was asking, the approver will need to answer the email received or open the app to reply. Yes, that is true, Mark. So typically in an app like this that I would do, if they click on the link, it will actually bring up the app. So essentially, it's always going back to the app where they will approve, deny, or interact with the data is through the app. The link in an email is just like a little shortcut to it. And we need to put in deep linking in the app as well.
Is there any way we could deep link a yes reply, like approved or a no from the email?
We could.
So they wouldn't have to do the app?
Yeah, we could do that.
That'd be kind of slick, wouldn't it?
Okay. The thing is, I mean, there's so many ways we could do this. We have so many options available to us. I mean, they could reply to the email. Then we could have I mean, depends on how much we want to rely on Power Automate flows. I mean, we can have a Power Automate flow that looks through emails. And if there's a response, that says yes or whatever, or if they click on a link in the email, what my thought is you bring up a Power Apps that will just take that little variable coming in on the link and then just displaying a screen. It's like, hey, we received your approval, or we received your reply, and that's it. Now Power Automate does have its own approval type of system, and I don't like it because it's really obvious you're using Power Automate. It's like SharePoint. I don't like people looking at the data through SharePoint. I want them to see it through my app.
Yeah,
so all kinds of different things.
I guess I was just thinking, because I've seen you do some deep linking that's pretty cool, and I thought maybe you could deep link a yes or no, and or have just a link to the app, so they could go to the app, or just hit yes or no, because they may want to go to the app just to look at all the comments and what's been going on with it before they do an approval on it. Or they might want to just say I approve.
Now, do you see this, Kurt from Code Assassin? I love that your little your profile photo in your name, Code Assassin. You can use adaptive cards. There you go. Just use adaptive cards, Kurt. So I know about adaptive cards. I haven't dealt too much with them. And I know Kurt, you and I haven't talked about adaptive cards. So
I can't even spell adaptive cards.
Okay. The Code Assassin says things. Yeah, you're welcome. Nick says, hello, Darren. Good day to you. since today's topic is about approval, are you going to use loop while waiting for approval responses?
Okay.
Use loop. I would say no. We probably won't use any looping. Now, there is a new Microsoft product called Loop that is almost a competitor to Notion. If you guys are familiar with a note-taking app called Notion. I don't think that's what you're talking about. I think you're maybe talking about either a timer. Now, if you're talking about Power Automate, I know you can do looping and branching and Power Automate, but no, I wasn't planning on doing that.
So I kind of like to talk about this adaptive card just real quick. Just
Okay.
real quick.
Sure.
Now, so when I hear card, I think of forms. I think of data card. My mind went to data card, which went to forms. We're not dealing with forms here, are we? When you're talking about these adaptive cards, you're not talking about a form, are you?
So is that question to Code Assassin?
It's a question to anybody. I was hoping Karen could answer it for me, maybe, since she did such a good job on the last one. What you know about adaptive cards, Karen?
All right. So adaptive cards, it says 4 teams.
Okay.
Code Assassin says no.
Okay. So, okay, that's really what I just wanted to know. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds on that. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's still a viable option to me then.
If you want to see, let's look at some samples. That might be good. Now, I've seen adaptive cards like in Teams, like in a chat. You can automate a lot of things that will sort of update a Teams chat.
I see.
People that use Slack, they have some automation stuff going on. Yeah, they are interactive cards. That's a good description of that, Code Assassin.
Okay. Yeah, I've never messed with it, so this is some kind of new stuff for me here.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a live stream sometime in the near future about adaptive cards. I think they are sort of cool and exciting.
I've got so much to do. Oh my gosh.
What are you doing with your life?
I know. I just feel like I'm behind the 8 ball all the time. And these accelerator students just keep me just hopping. It's like, oh my gosh. Because they really keep you on your toes. They got some real challenging things, and it's like, whoa.
Well, they're getting you back for the bouncing red ball.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yes.
It's all about revenge.
Who said yeah? Was that Karen or Patty?
It was me.
Yeah, so you guys are starting to feel what it was like to take one of Kurt's classes. And you turn something in, you're like, okay, this is like you spent all week on a lab and you turn it in and it comes back. And Kurt, did you use, would you put a grade letter on a lab or was it just a points?
Points.
It was just points.
Points. Like, if you got 80% or more, you got an A. So I had a really easy grading system. If you got 80 or more above, you got an A in my class. And everybody said, "Oh, that's a great class." And I said, "You need to ask yourself, why do you got to have it at 80 to get an A? Because nobody can get 90."
Yeah, you get extra credit if you impress the old man.
And that's what he would do. So he would always come up with that, and that's kind of what he's doing here with this. I had this idea on how I'd want to put it together, and now he's kind of putting something together a little slicker than I was going to do it. So
I'm thinking I'll have 3 columns. One of the details for the request, then I've got the approval chain, and then I'll have a chat here. And it might look a little weird because I've got this little rounded corner rectangle here. So I might change it up. I need to be careful that I don't spend too much time on appearance stuff, because I can get wrapped up into that really easily. Shell says, no, not the ball.
She's still.
Yeah, so the approvals out of the box uses adaptive cards to send the approvals in email and Teams. Yeah. Very cool. All right. So here are the approval steps, and we're going to look them up based on the current record. And we do have a current record because if I click on one, we do have a record, and you see we have data here. Okay. And the request field on the record is actually a GUID. As you guys know, Dataverse will create a primary key by the same name as the table name. So that's what that is. But we're looking at the request lookup on the approval steps. Okay. So we're looking at this, trying to match this up with one row here. Okay. And to look at that, I'm going to go in and hit edit data so we can see it. And this looks like some bad data because we don't have anything in name. So I'm going to delete that one. And let's look at here, the request lookup. So we should have items here. Okay, so that's maybe why my my gallery isn't showing any data because the foreign key wasn't populated. Okay, so what I need to do down here where we added it, the approval steps,
Here's your lookup.
we did a request lookup. And let's see here. We're using that record for that. And I don't think it's adding it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit submit. Okay. And now I'm going to go look at steps and make sure that that code is working properly. And it does not look like it's working properly.
Yeah, it's not getting in that variable.
Yeah. So let's go look at this. And okay, so we're looking at the new record. It says true. This is a new record.
Not.
And the reason why I did that, I don't have an else block, is because I don't have a reference to it until after we patch.
Right. Right.
You know? But then we need the reference to the step down here. So I think I'm going to have to copy this, go down here. And then if that is a new record, then I want to go in here and do this. Now, guys, did you ever think when you were learning Power Apps that you'd be working on code like this in a low code, no code type of platform? No. Yeah. All right. So if it was a new record, we're going to update this, and we've already set the name, so I'm not going to have the name there. And the user is already in there. We just need to set this up. Okay. And I should do an update context here to grab the record. Guys, do you know that whenever you do a patch, that the patch function will actually return the record as the newly updated patched record? So a lot of times I like to sort of catch that into a variable. And in this case, I've got a local record sitting out here ready to receive that fresh record that was updated. So that should be there. And then down here, I will put that there. And then right after that, what I do need to do is, I was about to do another update context. Do you guys know whenever you use the update context function that if you have several local variables to update, you could just do it all within one call?
They did if they looked at my update context video.
I like it.
But did you know that you got to be careful when you're doing that? Because if you're using one of those variables in the list in one of your other variables in the list, then that could cause a problem because those variables don't update. None of the variables update until after the entire function's ran its course. Yeah.
Okay, so I was trying to update this loc. Oh, it needs to be loc new record. That's what's going on. There we go. So what you were saying, Kurt, was that you got to be careful because if I like, let's say this value is based on this variable. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Let's say you're adding that one to another variable. That first one's not going to get updated. If you were updating that first one and then using it for the second one, you won't see that it won't work until after the update context.
No bueno, huh?
Yeah, no bueno. I show that in one of the accelerator videos that I do. I show the problem, how you can run into a problem with that. The values don't change.
Joshua here in the private chat says, just starting that section on collections. Very cool.
Yep.
All right, so we updated that to be false. Now I'm gonna go ahead and run this and see if the new code will. I'm probably creating a bunch of new rows here. Okay, so I saw some champagne bubbles and then they disappeared. And what I want to do, you know what? I just want to see all the approval steps right now. I don't want to worry about the filtering, okay? And what I can do here is I could set this up to maybe be 100 so we have a lot more room. And what we can do here is say parent.template width. And then put that down here. And I wanted to do a filter based on this request lookup. Okay. What are you laughing about?
Tony's comment up there. I saw that. And like we've always said about ChatGPT, you got to really watch ChatGPT because sometimes it's crazy, right? With its replies. So that would be one of the places. When it says ask Kurt, oh boy. Yeah, I'm that kind of person that says, sometimes if you say, well, Kurt says, and then Kurt's totally wrong. But then if you say, well, Kurt's always wrong. Boy, I'll come up with the one that's, you just don't ever give up on old Kurtaroo because sometimes I'm going to be right. Just like a broke clock, right?
That's right. If Rick was on, he would have something witty to say right there.
Oh, he's been having something witty to say. But did he leave?
No, he's
in the private chat. Video. Oh yeah, he's been over here just antagonizing me through the whole time, talking about Curly and.
So Kurt, I got a problem here. Yeah. Whenever I add a new record, I'm not getting that request lookup set up.
Okay, so
we got to get to the bottom of that.
All right, so you're putting it in a variable. So is the variable blank?
So
you go so fast.
Well, there's a lot of code. There's a lot of code in here.
It's hard to keep track of him, man. I hope you guys are trying to follow him because I'm going, what?
All right, so we patch the approval steps and we say request lookup. So if I go over and look at these steps, I'm going to go back in there and look. Were you about to say something?
What I always do is I Okay, so if it's a new record, you're going to get it from the patch of the first one. Okay. If
Mhm.
it's not a new record, then you're going to get it from your gallery or from wherever you're selecting it in. You're already going to know it coming in. So if you populate it before then, if it's not new,
Mhm.
right? So where are you populating it before then? If it's
Okay, so this is the patch of the request right here.
okay,
Okay. And what we needed was this
the app user, if it's so you're going to get it from the first patch, the one above it, right?
the current step lookup, which comes up right here, the current step.
Yeah.
So we add a fresh new record here for the approval.
Yeah.
Okay. And we put it in this variable. And then this variable down here is what we use right there for current step lookup.
So if it's the first one, it would be both. Both of them would be that current step, right?
Yeah, that new record will be the one that we need to associate here. And this is, see, it's sort of weird. We have two relationships about the same thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like if we had a customer, we had a one-to-many relationship between a customer and their sales. Okay. So let's say they bought a lot. We're talking about Amazon, right? I'm buying stuff on Amazon every day. And I got all these orders. Well, maybe over here on person or customer, I want to reference back to the sales, and that field is called the current order, the last order placed. Okay. And then I reference back. So in that case, it's like a one-to-one relationship. So we got two relationships going on. And what I want to do here on the approval steps, as long as it's not new, because if it is new, we're not going to have a reference to it. So that's why down here, we set it up, request lookup. So that's where it should be going. You know what? This current step down here, I should be using that right here. That would explain it.
Because you got to go to that current step. You got to go to the record.
I'm going to add it again.
I guess so.
Look at that. So now we've got a GUID in here. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to clean out all this stuff because we got essentially bad data now, right? We've got orphan records. Oh. Man, those classic buttons look really big and clunky, don't they now?
Yeah.
All right.
It's
what I'm going to do.
I'm torn because the classic buttons, they don't render as nicely, but they do more things. They're fully baked,
Yeah, they're tried and true.
I'd rather deal with clunky fully baked than elegant half baked.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to do a delete operation on the whole table. Delete if true.
So I really think it would behoove all of us, including you, maybe, to go through that whole thing again to make sure that everybody's understanding what you did there and why you did it.
Yeah, Rick says don't do anything half-baked. Back when I started learning programming, even before I was allowed to take your class, Kurt, I had to take logic and I had to learn about pseudocode and doing all that. I feel like we almost need some pseudocode or maybe a flow diagram of what's going on in this little submit button. Just a thought.
That would be great.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's more important than the because this logic here is probably to understand and learn this logic is probably more important than the whole app itself right, at this point. You know, I just sometimes I feel like people when they watch we don't explain it, we don't take time to explain it. They're not learning how to code for themselves then, and then they're just cutting and pasting. And you know, I want to see people empowered in this. You know,
Absolutely. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my code window up here on another window so I can look at my code while I
and
build
I'm here.
this.
I'm just jumping away for a second.
No,
Just for a second. I'm here.
I have abandonment issues. All right. So so at the very top of this, what we do is we ask a question. So we're going to say the name of this button is actually called button submit request. So up here, I'm going to put the name there. I'm going to say dot on select. And let's make this a little bigger. Okay. So this tool, guys, is from Draw.io, and I believe it's an open source project. So it should be free for you to download and use. So Jad says, why don't try collection to see how it's saved? From there, you'd have a visual of the problem. Yeah. All right. So we click on this. Okay. So the question is the person affected in the users table? Okay. If they're not, what we're going to do is we're going to add them. Okay. And then I feel like this needs to be a little bigger so we can see it all. There we go. He's back.
I am.
So now we want to say what about the person is the approval person in the users table? And what I'm going to do here, let's try to reuse some of this. Right there. Add them. Okay. Now, maybe I should say, should I say patch, or does everybody know that that's how we add them?
Yeah. Say patch. Put patch in there.
Okay.
Because that's the only way you're going to add them is to patch them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, what is this thing doing here? I've got to know. Okay, it readjusted itself. Okay. And look at this. Yes. Like, guys, I am a sucker for visuals. This is probably where you'd probably be better at driving, because I'll get hung up on things aligning and.
No, because it would take me 45 minutes to move the arrow.
Okay. All right. So really, how would we do this with a flow diagram? Because if we do add them, I just want it to go back here. So, right, that's ugly.
So put that section in right below, and have it. Put that square. See where I'm pointing? See
No.
that right where I'm pointing there. That square, put it right below the first diamond, and then have a patch them if needed, right? Because you're going to the next diamond one way or t'other.
Yeah. That's true.
That works.
Oh, okay. So little yellow dot will be where the yes goes. Okay. So does that look good to you guys? Does that make
Think so.
sense? Boom. No,
No,
add
yeah.
them. I
Pad
feel like we need an arrow though. And the arrow is there, but it's on top of the other one.
But you don't need that yes there, right? You get that yes out of there.
That's true.
And
Kurt, what would I do if you weren't here? Oh,
I don't know. I just don't know. It
okay.
wouldn't be as profound.
Well, Kurt, how do I take the yes out?
Well, can you just move it out of the way somewhere? For now, that way, just at least it's not in the way.
Well, now it bugs me.
Okay.
Delete. No.
There you go. That's how you get rid of it. Delete.
Oh, you know what this yes is? This yes is about this question. So that makes sense. Is the person affected in the user statement? Yes, they are.
There you go.
Okay. Shoo.
Yeah. So now we're in there. But it's more importantly, you're using a variable, that LOC record. I guess this diagram's okay, but understanding the population of that LOC record, that's what's important too. So,
okay. But we haven't got there yet.
we haven't got there yet.
Okay.
I don't think.
So we check to see that, and I need to duplicate this.
Aren't you populating LOC record at that point though when you put them in there? Maybe you should make a note of that there and to add them using patch.
I don't even think we're using that. Yeah, we're not doing that.
Okay.
And then we go down here and we do the same thing for the approver. And so we haven't been able to get down to this part yet. That'll be the next thing to do.
Okay.
But what I want to do, take that out, and then this. Okay. I wonder if I could get rid of some of this stuff. I should have gone across because we have more space that way. All this for a button, a button on select. Okay, so what we have down here, need to attach this to this, okay? And we're not repairing a lamp. What are we doing? We are creating a new approval step record. Okay. That's what we're doing right here. All right. Now we put that into a variable. Put in loc current step. Okay. And then we'll have to have that whenever we patch the user, not the user, but the request. So I'm going to copy and paste that. So the next line of code, patch. It's either the current record. We patch the loc record. Okay. And that could be either a new or existing. And let's see what our choices are here. I guess that. Okay. And then we've got all kinds of stuff that we can, other different things that we can pull in here. But we're actually using that loc current step in here to patch it. Okay, as you can see right here. Then after that, we are going to patch the current step and make sure it's pointing back. Okay. So that's pretty much everything that's in the button right now. Let me rearrange us a little bit and see if I can. Is there a full screen form of this? No.
And so if you don't mind, once you walk through that, could you step through the button one more, the button code one time? Just one more time.
Sure. So that's all that's going on here. So are you ready for the code again?
Yep.
So here's step 1. There's step 2. Make sure the approver's in there. Then we go down here and we're creating a new approval step. Now that needs to eventually change, because if we're just going in there and let's say we update the subject line of the request, well, we don't want to be creating a new approval step every time, you know? So we need to refactor that. Okay.
Yep.
And so we've got 2 lookup fields here. We have the user lookup and then we have the request lookup. Okay. See here, there's the lookup and there's the lookup. Then down here, this is the main patch that we patch the request record based on if it's a new record or not. Okay. And here's a lookup column and here's a lookup column on the request. And then we go down.
Now, more important, go back up there real quick there. So
Okay.
that LOC record up there is getting populated from that patch. So that patch is going to perform and it's going to return a record. Patch returns a record and it's going to put those contents into LOC record.
Yeah.
That's where, okay, so that's the magic right there. Then you come down. I just want to make sure everybody's understanding that. So now when you're doing this update context here, in the middle of this, there's going to be there's a patch here. Okay. This patch is going to be using that LOC record that we captured from the patch above. So so that LOC record is the entire record. And if you look at a lookup is a record, right? It's a record that points to the one side of your one-to-many relationship. Okay. So what you're doing is you're saying, go over there to the one side, because that's how we're going to be associating this later. We're going to be mapping that. So we need to be able to put that record in there so it knows to go to that record. That's that LOC record that it captured in that patch. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah.
I feel like that's maybe one of the most complicated maneuvers in database programming, is that right there. So I just want to make sure everybody understands it. And if you can understand that, there's not much you can't do. You know?
Yeah,
And
I like
know-
those statements. Mhm.
Go ahead there.
I like the statements that you make like that, Kurt, because that's what inspired me. Is like we got to the last lab of Visual Basic level 1, and you say, guys, listen, people pay big money for this. If you can read a record, write a record, process a record, the 4 major operations that you do with a record. Right?
Yep. It's really all it breaks
really comes down to that.
Yep. It breaks down to that. And I appreciate you walking through this for everybody, Darren. I know that you got a bigger mission here trying to get stuff accomplished, but I think that this helps people a lot more by just walking through that a little bit.
Yeah. I think something else that would probably be good if I could sort of visualize it somehow with a special shape, but show all of the variables that are at play here. Because the reason why I have to go back and patch this thing again is because we could have been working with a brand new request. And that's why we have to do that. If we have a new request, we don't have a reference to it yet.
Is there any way that we could do that because eventually you're going to have a gallery and it's going to be showing the person's all their requests that they've got, old requests. And if they've got a new request, you can hit the plus sign or something to make a new request. And that's where maybe could we populate something there at some point? Could we populate it there instead of having to go backwards and do 2 patches to that?
So you want to do it at some other point in time. I would hate for data to be out of sync, but that might not be a bad use case for Power Automate. It's like, hey, go find the current step and now update this. But I just hate for things to be out of sync. You know what I mean? Because maybe a second later, maybe the next line of code, I need those relationships to be there.
Yeah. And maybe I'm not understanding that process enough. I guess I was just thinking that. No, I think you're right. Cause you got two relationships going there at the same time. So that's the problem. You got to go and get one relationship and then get to the next one. I think the way you're doing it's the best way to do it, man.
Well, thank you.
I was hoping there was a slicker way because I just hate going back and doing that second patch. It's really bugging me.
Joshua asks in the private chat, can you add version control to edits to the record? Yes. I mean, we can do anything. In this use case, though, I'm not going to allow anything to be deleted. So we are going to have a full audit history, if that's what you're getting at, Joshua. So if this request is going to be thrown to somebody else for an approval, we'll still have that chain there. We'll have that audit history going on there. Okay. Now, what we need to do, Kurt, if we pull up this request, we need a way of saying, hey, I want to assign this to somebody else needs to approve it. But that would be, in this case, we have Adam here. And this should have been Nicole. Okay. So it should take Nicole coming in and assigning it to someone else. So I'm thinking over here in this middle gallery, Kurt, remember what we did with the galleries? We had a whole series of live streams on the gallery where we had an empty record. You remember that? Maybe we can always have an empty record sitting here where we could say, well, let's add this to the approval chain, What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I guess one of my thoughts was that we could have that third over there populated with the current record that's being selected, the current request is being selected. And if they hit a plus or something, then we could populate it with a new one, maybe.
Okay. So it's not there until they hit a button and then it would add one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that way they could just be working with off of the current ones that maybe they just want to look at the old ones,
Yeah. Well, really, the person that should only be allowed to add people to that approval chain would be the person that is assigned right here on the approver.
Yeah.
That should be the only person doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. Something else we could do is if Nicole logs in, looks at this record, she goes, nope, Darren needs to approve his own stuff. And she types in Darren. At that point, boom, it adds a new record right there in the middle column.
Yeah.
That's an idea. Trying to figure out what the way that I want to go about it.
Hey, Darren.
Mm-hmm.
In my current app that I want to rewrite with this app, I have my approver hard coded. So can I still do that with this one?
Now, what do you
we
mean by
only have
hard?
one approver. Yeah, it's just I think it's either a combo box or maybe even a label with just his name and his email address. And it just pops up and shows that he's the approver and that's who it goes to. And it cannot be changed.
Oh, and it can't be changed. And there's only
Right.
one, is what you're saying,
And there's
right?
only one. Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So what you were asking was how do you sort of fit that into what we're doing here, or trying to take what we're doing here and fit it into what you're doing?
Well, right. If I were to rewrite my app like this, can I just still hard code the approver instead of using the approver that you're using now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see why
Okay.
not.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
You know what? I've got an idea. I'm going to cut that out and put it over. Whoa, I didn't want it to be like that. Set up the width to be something like whatever the width of this gallery is. So we'll say gal. Approval step. And I will click on these two controls and set up the width to be the same width as that gallery. Okay. Then I'll go over to the X, say the gallery X. Here we go. I like it. And whenever this thing changes, it would update that or add a new record. And maybe we could have a little button here. Kurt, do you think that that makes sense from the UI UX standpoint? Set.
Does what make sense? Having the
What
button
I'm doing
there?
here. So, so I'm thinking about taking some of that code out there having to do with the approver and having it set here on this button. And if they pick somebody else, then it'll just add them, because I had it in here and I didn't want to change it. You know, it's sort of like this really is changing the information on this many relationship where all this
Yep.
stuff is on the one relationship.
Yeah. It's more intuitive, I think, that way.
What's that?
It's more intuitive this way, I think.
Yeah. Code Assassin, if approvers are out of office, you should always be able to reassign or have fallback approvers. That's true. I like that. So maybe that's a feature that we'll add in there. Okay. So let's say this is a new record. Here's a question I have for you, Kurt. If you're building this app and we come in here and Darren's coming in and requesting a new request, In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on home. I'm going to click on new request. I'm in here. Nicole's in here. Now, I hit this button. Should I automatically set Nicole as the approver?
Well, now, so this was one of the questions that were in my mind, and this is kind of going along with what Patty was thinking, I think too, because Patty's got one approver, and she's got a canned situation where she has a process that has a canned, where there's always going to be this one approver, right? When I say canned, that means one approver. Maybe we have different types of approval processes. Maybe if it's like wanting equipment, it's got to go through 3 or 4 different approvers, and those would be canned. They would always be the same approvers every time going through that process. And then then there might be another process. Say they want to, I don't know, they want some time off or something. That would be a different approval process, and it would have different approvers, and they would be canned all the time. So we would have, in addition to having a dynamic placement like you're doing here, I think it would behoove us to have a canned thing where we could actually have approvers. So we could have like approval type, and then we could have the approvers that are assigned to that approval type, and then that they would automatically just go in there, bam, and then the I can't. I'm stuttering because my mind is thinking so fast. I can't even think so fast. So
do you guys hear that? I hear it. Scope creep right there. I hear it.
Well, okay. So some people could call that scope creep, but some people could call it poor planning. So what? So I this was just something that's always been in the back of my mind since the beginning of this whole thing was if we have different types of approvals, but the way you're doing this is dynamic, it can handle both then, right? But it's requiring them to select it each time is what I'm saying. It's requiring them to do that each way.
Yeah.
But it is scope creep. So for the purposes of what we're getting done here, that's why I was kind of shutting up. I didn't want to say anything. But now since you asked that question, I said, well, because Patty's point right there could be maybe there's 2 or 3 processes that have to happen, and we're asking the users to know those processes. And maybe there are people like me that just don't know, they can't keep track of that stuff very well. So, hey, who's got to go in this approval process? Which person do I got to put in there? Who do I got to ask for this?
And my thinking is you don't got to worry about it because it's going to default to your manager. Let them figure it out.
Now, if you've got this thing automatically defaulting to your manager, that's part of it right there. That kind of solves, that's kind of a go-between those two things, right? And that's what you're doing. Yeah.
Trying to keep it flexible, default to the manager. And that's, we got to make them earn that title, manager. They need to know if there's somebody else that needs to approve it. You got a question, ask your manager. They should have the answers, or they'll go find who's responsible for approving that. And then they would go in here and add to it. And I see Eric over in the private chat. Can you set up the approvers as a permission setting for the user?
Yeah.
Now expound on that, Kurt, because I'm not sure where he's going with that.
Well, okay, there's 2 places he could be going, I guess, now that you said that. One is, I guess you're saying, can only certain people set up the approvers? Is that what you're saying? That's what I thought you were saying. Is that accurate? Okay.
He says yes.
Okay. And absolutely we can do that, right?
Yeah, I would almost want to set that up to we gotta identify and stick to an MVP, otherwise we won't get this thing done.
You're right. And I guess that's part of the reason why I've been so quiet is because my mind is just this thing could get as complex as we want to make it, man.
Yeah.
And every time
but I like this. I like your input and your feedback here, Kurt, because it's sort of because this question might be in other people's minds, and like you and me, our minds work similarly, and perhaps others as well, where your mind gets hung up on something. A lot of times it's hard to really benefit from the training or whatever's being said because your brain is your mind is stuck on something, you know.
Yeah,
so it's good to sort
sure.
of flesh this stuff out.
Yeah. Every time I open my mouth, I feel like we're taking an extra hour on this thing now. So,
Okay.
most that you okay. So the user component that we have, the connector that we hook into, that's got the manager, the person's manager, and that's what you're using.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if a company doesn't set all that stuff up? They will.
Somebody needs to set it up. I mean,
Somebody needs to set it up, Kurt. That's the problem right there. You got to set that up, man. Okay.
we dealt with that at a large place I was at, and they're like, oh yeah, we need to set this up. You cannot believe how much of an undertaking with these organizations that you work with, whatever. It's like you just need basic information, like who the manager roll up is and who their manager is. It's like it should be very simple, you know.
I'm just thinking of these production environments that I've worked in. Yeah, Kurt, we're not there. We're not setting that up, man. It's gonna we had it set up 20 years ago, but somebody got fired, and it's just never gotten set up again.
So if we didn't have that to rely on, what we would need to do is create an admin screen for somebody to build that for this app.
Yeah.
Either that or the person would know who their manager is, whether it's in there or not. So that's what's nice about having it here is they can set it.
Okay. So we got that. We can set it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I almost want to have it over here, like who the initial person that it was set to, because the person filling it out, or they're filling out this first column. And then later on, this thing can be used to add the subsequent ones. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut that, put it back in here. But I'm going to copy it and then put it up here. Okay. So now at the end of this, well, let's go back to our little button flow chart here. We're going to patch the current step with the LOC record. Now what needs to happen? Well, we need to let we need to have a notification sent out. Email approver, carbon copy the person affected and the person filling it out. Okay. And this is where we get into our deep linking there.
It is interesting. Joshua just brought up something. He said, don't forget to set your clocks back tonight. So we get an extra hour. So, if we need to spend an extra hour on this, maybe we could just go ahead. Okay, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me, guys. Okay. Darren's going to mute me now.
I might. You guys. All right. I'm minimizing that. All right.
We lose an hour. Gosh, dang it. That's right. We lose an hour. Oh, we got to stop now.
All right. It's much more peaceful now. What we'll do here at the bottom is I'm gonna go look for Outlook 365. Office 365 Outlook. Pull that in so we can send out an email. Oh, look at all these things we can do with Outlook. I got two eyes. And send email v2. You always use the latest version if you can. All right, let's open this up. Let's see what our IntelliSense tells us here. So the first one is who it's being emailed to. So what we want to do is the approver. So CBO approver dot selected dot mail. Okay. Then we have the subject line, which is this request requires your approval. What should we say here? Somebody besides Kurt. Okay, then we have the body. And for right now, I'm just going to use the same string. Okay, we'll use curly braces because we have all kinds of different things to put in here. We have the from, which we'll leave alone. We'll put in the carbon copy because we want to have the CBO requester or person affected. They need to be carboned in here. So we'll say selected.mail. And then I'm going to put in a semicolon and then also add in the user.email. Okay. And then we'll also do the importance. If you send out an email with this connector, always put like a low importance on it, which I really don't like. I want to set that at least as normal. There we go. Yeah, normal. Okay. Now, if we're going to send an email out, we need a link back to the app, which I've got right here. I'm going to click on that little icon. And then say char 13. And then put that in there. Now, I don't like having a big URL like this sitting out here in code. What we should do, guys, is we should make use of our app formulas. And we'll just put this in here, fx app URL. And there we go. I'm going to put a space between each of these. Make it look a little nicer. So now we don't have to reference this again. You guys like that?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so we'll have the URL in there. Now we haven't added any parameter. We haven't added any parameters to that URL. And what I'm thinking is we'll want to add something in there. Okay. And what we should do is call it over here on the ERD diagram as the request. The request, the request.request. Because we're using Dataverse, its primary key is this unique identifier. So I'm going to call it request ID. Okay. So I'll do an ampersand request ID. I'll use an equal sign. And we'll say loc record dot request. That should be good.
Like it.
Okay. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to run it. I'm going to go back home, say new request. And I'm going to say, please help. Well, this isn't a ticketing system, right? Need pizza for a working lunch. Pepperoni, please. Okay, I'm going to submit that. See the champagne bubbles at the top. Oh, we got a problem. 2. A blank value was passed on the 2. Okay. Okay. This might be the case where I mean Nicole inactive because she's not really active in this Power Labs US environment. So I'm going to bring over a little label. Okay. And I'm going to put that in there. Oh, it's got Adam in there. Okay, that's weird. Okay. Let's try that. There's champagne bubbles. No air. For some reason, my camera keeps moving. There we go. Okay. And we are getting some records here with some quiz. That's good. So now we could probably filter this. Okay. So Nicole was set. Mm-hmm. And then what? You guys see this? This must be an adaptive card. What is this? Do you see that, Kurt?
Yeah, I see it.
All right. I don't know if this came from I mean this I guess it read my email and created a little adaptive card out of it.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was interesting. Okay. So what I want to do to this little gallery here, I want to open this up a little more. Okay. And I'm going to add in a little label, and I'm going to say for this label, I'm like, hey, this is the current one. And I'll give it a nice little background color. $30. Maybe make this 80. Give it a full color there. Okay. And then we'll make that visible if the loc record dot current step lookup dot step lookup approval step equals this item dot approval step. Okay, so I'm going to go up, let's see, a few pixels on that. Okay, so this is the current person that needs to approve or deny. This button over here, maybe. Okay. Now this thing I wanted to have for the chat. So let's make this interesting. I think the chat was a really exciting feature. So let's open this up a little bit and have, if we use a rich text editor, That might make it the chat a little bit more interesting, right? And then we'll add a button here. You know what? Instead of that, there's a universal icon. Send. And it looks like that. Okay. And I'll set up this color to be FX. We've got like a theme set up here, and we can say primary blue. Put it right there. Okay. So the data for this will be workflow chats. And we'll make this a little bigger, like 100. And when they click on this little send button, we'll take whatever is in this rich text editor chat, and I'll put it in that button there. Patch, chat, workflow chats. We'll say defaults. Now, something that everybody would expect to have in a chat is it needs to be refreshed somewhat often, because if somebody else is looking at the same record and they type something, you want to be able to see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll need to put something in there for that. And what we'll do here is we will say, well, we need to look at our ERD diagram here. What do we have for the chat? We have a chat message. Okay. Chat message equals whatever is in that rich text editor dot HTML text. Now, instead of a regular label in here, that's not going to work out anymore. We're going to need to rip that out and put in a HTML. It's going to be a classic. HTML text over there. Okay. And like that. And then this will be this item dot chat message. And I believe we have a name field that should probably have something in there. And this will be user.name. Okay. What else do we need? We need the request lookup. Okay. Which is very easily accessed by loc record. And then we have an app user lookup. App users. And we'll say Entra ID equal user Entra ID. And that should be good. So we've got those 4 fields taken care of. And that's it. That's all we need there. So I could be in here. And what I need this to be, the default value. We'll take that out. So there's nothing in there yet. So it's giving me an error here. So this is a GUID. This is text. I think that's what's going on here. So I'm going to have to say text. And then it's going to be happy.
There it is. Yeah.
Tony says, I just did an app with deep links, and then they got a vanity URL. I can't do the deep links with this vanity URL. Do you know how to do deep links with? I'm not sure what a vanity URL is. Do you guys know, Kurt? Or
I'm just speculating that it's a mask over top of the other URL that's got like their name, you know.
okay.
So it would be like Darren Neese, and that would be mapped to some other crazy URL underneath it. That's what I'm assuming that's what that is.
Yeah. As long as that parameter's in there, that I believe that should be passed through something like you're using a tiny URL or something that's, as Kurt was describing, as a mask. Hopefully that parameter should still come over. Okay. So I am going to run this. I'm like, hey guys, this is really important. I need it by the end of the day. I hit enter. What happens? Look at that. I'm up there. Hey, there's Daniel. This is next level stuff you're showing here. Well, cool, man. I feel like I got a celebrity on the show. How you doing, Daniel? So, guys, I'm sure you guys have seen his channel. Daniel has been how long have you been an MVP, Daniel? Probably a few years. By the way, I was thinking about you when I posted my SQL procedure video. No, you're cool. You'll have to check that out. Very nice. Okay, so I have that chat here, but I want this to look a little nicer. What if we were to? Well, I don't want to get fancy. It'd be nice if, like Kurt would say, personally, I like to use mine. If we get something usable here.
Right. Sure.
So what I would say is this item user lookup name says that.
Be right back.
Okay. And we might also want to have something in there along the lines of when it was said. And we'll probably want to put in some padding of at least 10 on the left, 10 on the top. And then make this a little bigger. And make the height to be dynamic. So we can say parent.template height. So that's good. Oh, Andrew Hess is on here too. Oh my goodness. Let's see here. And I might put in here, we could put in like a parenthesis, and we could say this item dot created on ampersand parenthesis. You know what? I want that colon in there too, and I'll take the colon out of there. Yeah. Okay. So we got that. Now, probably what we should do is reset this rich text editor when they click on the send. Right after the patch. So I'll say reset. Okay. So if I were to hit send again, it should. It's going to take a hot moment. There we go. And then it cleared it out. Okay. All right. So what I feel like is if this thing has already been done here, if it's been submitted, they shouldn't be able to hit save or submit. So what I'm going to do on the display mode is I'm going to check to see if LOC new record, if it's new, it'll allow them to edit. Otherwise, we'll say disabled. Okay. So now they really can't do anything there. I'm going to go back in here and turn off this debug mode because I don't want to see these little red squares anymore. And I think I'll take these labels out now. Okay. And this thing, I want to set this up to only be allowed to be used if they are the approver. So if I do a lookup on app users, okay, and then based on the Entra ID, equals the loc record dot current dot app users lookup dot app user. Okay. If those things are the same, then we'll allow them to edit. Otherwise, they'll be disabled. Okay, so what are we doing here? This is a single line of text, and this thing is a GUID. So we need to say text here. Okay. All right, so I am not Nicole. Okay, and I don't like other people to be displayed here. And it's being displayed by default selected items, it looks like. Okay, so if it's a new record, and right now that's false, so it's going to go in here, look at the loc record, current step, app user. So it'd actually be putting Nicole's name up there. So I'm a little confused why that's doing that. Okay. Okay. But if I'm going to test this out, I almost need it too. So I'll also say, or global debugging. Maybe FX debugging. There we go. So if I'm just testing this, I could set this to true. Okay. And now I can change it. Okay. So let's say I want to change this to be Kurt. Okay. And then I click on that button. What is that button? What should that button do? It should just add a new one and make it the current one. Okay. So I'm going to say patch. A new step. What's our table name? Approval step. Defaults.
Awful quiet.
That's what I was saying. And we're going to say these things here. So the name, what are we putting in the name down here? Right here, this is what we were doing for the name. Mesmerized by the skill. We're a brain fart. I mean, sometimes okay. We're gonna put in a name here and do that. Look up on the users. Now we're gonna use this combo box now. The specified column underscore does not exist. Okay. It has a name, right? Should. Oh, you see I've got this comma here. If I check the comma out, it's fine. All right, so the next thing I want to put in is the app user lookup. And we're going to set that up to be selected. Do a lookup. All right. And they haven't made a decision yet, but we'll do a request lookup. And that'll be loc record. And that'll be that. Okay. So, Kurt, I'm going to set you up to be the approver now. So you get to approve if I get a pizza during my lunch. And now what it should have done is made that the current one. So not only should we have patched, need to get at that button. There we go. I need to do an update context and say loc record patch on the request. Loc record. And we'll set up the current to be the record that we created up here. So what we need is another update context. And we'll say current step. So curly brace, parenthesis, and that, and then we'll go get that local variable and put it right there. We should be good. Okay. So I'm going to run it. So there's Kurt. Set you up as the approver. There you are. Okay. That almost seemed like it did something weird with the records here.
Yeah.
Because we got Adam on both of these and things are cleared out. So I think the app is confused. So say new request and request 1. Okay. And then I'm going to try to make this bigger for you guys. I'm going to submit this. And then I'm like, well, Nicole's out. Kurt needs to approve this. Set him as the approver now. And I can tell this gallery is not filtering. Yeah, I see it says just workflow chats. What we need to do is do a filter on this. And we only want to look at where the request lookup. Oh, this is funny. I think these are adaptive cards, guys. If I'm not mistaken. Okay. Request lookup is what we need to look at there. Dot request equals LOC record dot request. Okay. And right now we don't have anything in the checks. Nobody has said anything. So I type a bunch of 1s. Darren said 111, 22. Okay. What do you guys think? It's almost too quiet.
I like it.
What do you think, Kurt?
I don't know yet. I'm still thinking it through.
Or what about Karen? What do you think, Karen?
I like it.
All right. Extra points if you say Picasso after I like it. The points that Kurt takes off.
I just wish there was a better way we could handle that button down there where you're doing, where you have to do that second update. I don't like it.
Are you talking about this button down here?
No, the green one. We're
Oh.
making it current. We got to make that one current. I don't know.
So tell me more about that.
Well, I don't know. I can't. That's why I'm saying. That's why I'm so quiet. I can't really tell you. If I knew, I would be all over it. But I'm almost got to just kind of look at that code maybe later on, and maybe I can just kind of look at it a little later, because there's just a couple things that I'm puzzled by right now on it. And also this. Okay, so you got this thing in a gallery with your chat.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go in between, let's say, we get 3 or 4 people communicating in this chat to each other, how's that going to operate? I want to see how that works.
Okay.
But other than that, I think it's pretty cool.
Let the approvals begin. I should probably do a publish too. Okay, so if Nicole actually Kurt, if you come in, you're actually the current approver. So I want you to come in here and say either approve, deny. I guess those would probably be our only 2 choices, right?
Yeah. So we got to get that done.
And this current thing. And that little current thing is just a little label.
So we're not going to let them kick the can to another responsible person, huh?
Oh yeah, we can.
Okay. At some point though, we've got to say yes or no in this thing.
Yeah, somebody's gonna have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I creating 2 buttons here. So I'm going to have one green and then one sort of maroon. If I can do that with these modern buttons here. Style and theme, base palette color. Can you just give me a little color thing here? Oh, okay. So these are the different themes they have set up for us. You guys notice that? So this is called the green theme. So if I pick, come on. You got to click inside this little white square and then click on green. And this one is a different green. I think I like the brighter green. Okay. I'm going to copy and paste that. I thought. There we go. And then this one, I'm going to set this up to be red. Okay. And for this button, we'll say deny. And this one will say approve. Okay. And then the only thing we're going to do is we're just going to update this decision.
Okay.
Eric says request an appearance from Lucy. Bring Lucy on here.
Thank goodness she's asleep. She's been just, haven't you guys been hearing her all morning? She's just been going nuts all morning.
I have to admit, Kurt, when I saw you this morning, I was thinking about calling the cops in your town and doing a wellness check on you for domestic violence because it looks like you've been beat up a little bit. Are you doing okay?
I'm getting beat up by a little girl. I mean, she just been tearing me up. Look, this right here. I got to get it right. Oh, it's this one right here. Look at that. She clawed me right there. Look at that. I need to go to ER. I had blood coming out of here. I had blood coming out of there. I had bloody up on my forehead. I was just fighting with her, and she's got these sharp claws, and she's just so cute, but she doesn't know what she's doing, you know, and I'm having fun with her. But yeah, look, it's crazy.
All right. So if they click on this button here, we'll do a patch on step. I can never remember names of tables approval step. And we'll say this item. Decision. Decision has been made. What proved? You know what we could do? Make this really slick. My mentor would really like this. Instead of using a hard-coded string literal like this, I just said self.text.
That's pretty smooth.
Approved. Denied.
Have a little dynamic action going on there, huh?
Yeah. Now I only want to make it visible.
So we got all these MVPs out here today. Can I get you MVPs to ask Microsoft to start working on control arrays for Power Apps? Can we start doing that so we can get really slick?
Kurt, you're gonna have to describe why you'd even use a control. Well, first of all, what is a control array, and why do you care?
Because it just make so you have galleries here, and galleries kind of work like a control array. It just repeats it. But wouldn't it be nice to have, if you have something where you need 30 things, then you could just create 30 text boxes, 30 text input boxes, or 30 buttons, you know, and it's all created as one button, just one button, and then make it have just like an array, you know. You would have an array of controls. Visual Basic used to have them. Obviously in C# you can do it. You know, I just think Power Apps would be great to be able to do that, you know. It would be so strong then, because we wouldn't have to use galleries for everything, you know.
Absolutely. I don't know if you caught on to this, but I was setting this up so they only appear if they're on the current, only Kurt can say approve, deny. But it reset these back to blue for a second, and I had to reset the color
What?
palette.
Wow.
Yeah, so these modern controls, they're not fully baked,
Half baked.
but they look nice. Okay, I'm gonna go back and look. So we're using all 4 of these tables. Okay, and then I'm gonna bring up my notes if I can find them here. I want you guys to see this. So we're dealing with requests. We have an approval tree. We have email notifications. We have deep linking. Now we haven't completed the deep linking yet. So that's something that we need to do here. Whenever we send off the email, so we do have the link in here. If I go to the bottom where we send the email, here is the parameter, okay? Tony says, which Power Apps could read and edit the SharePoint URL field without flow?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do that. That's interesting. So what we need to do is we need to look for this when somebody opens up the app. Okay. So we are on the request screen. And I'm going to call this edit requests screen. Okay. And I'm going to go to the app, and I'm going to go to the start screen. Okay. And what I'm going to do, you guys have never done deep linking, here you go. If param is blank, if it is blank, then we know it just wasn't supplied. So just go ahead and go over to the home screen. Otherwise, we will go to the edit request screen. Okay. And then we'll do something similar here. Okay. When that screen loads up on the on visible, if we say not, okay, that means it was provided. And what we need to do here is go do a lookup. LOC record. I have a feeling we're going to have to use a global at somewhere in the middle of this. But let's go do a lookup on requests where the request is the same as GBL. Do I want to do that here? If it is blank, no, we need this whole thing. Deep link. So this will be a Boolean. If it's set to true, that means we're using deep linking. And then we can check for this. Okay. And we're doing deep linking, so we need to go look up the requests. We'll go ahead and use this params to get at the value. Kurt, I reverted to my my computer programming variable equals something.
Equals.
I
I
can't
saw
do
that. I was like, well, this is some new stuff. I was getting
Guys,
excited there for a second.
going live for 2 to 3 hours isn't as easy as
No,
all
it's
these
not.
lights and
It's not. That's why I call you you're like a F-16 fighter pilot over there, man, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I can't type in front of one person, let alone jeepers.
Okay, I'll cut that. Take that out. So essentially what we're doing is we're doing an update context. Okay, LOC record equals or colon this. Now it's got a problem. So that's going to be a GUID. This request is a unique identifier. I wish I could typecast this string to a GUID, because if I do a text here, I'm gonna have a delegation problem. It would work until I reach the 2000, and then you'll have a problem. So we'll need to refactor that and deal with that. You need types to be the same if you're doing filters on. I sort of
like
wonder.
you say though, sometimes if it depends on what data source you're working with too, right? Some data sources can maybe can handle that.
There's a GUID function. Do you see that? GUID string. Yeah. String to a GUID. There we go. Now we don't have a delegation problem, because it's on the right side, not on the left side. And I always put the fields on the left side from this data source. Okay.
Look at that.
So now we're dealing with deep linking. We've loaded it up. Now what we need to do is say, we need to set this thing to false. Otherwise, we're always thinking that we're trying to do the deep linking. So we set this to false. And then we also need to say, because we come back in. See, this param isn't reset. I believe throughout the whole app, the lifetime of the app, if a parameter is being passed in, we always have something in that params. And I don't want to think that this is the first time we let, because we could be in the app clicking around from screen to screen. We come back to this screen. It's like, oh yeah, here's the param. You clicked on an email from, clicked on the link in an email. No, that was 10 minutes ago. I'm in here doing other stuff now. Right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So how should we handle that, Kurt? I had this Boolean.
So you're going to have to recreate that if it's empty. If deep link is empty, right? If your deep link global variable is empty, you're going to have to create it. So just test that to see if it's empty. And if it's not empty, then you're going to use it, right?
And we sort of can't have it be a Boolean because we need a third state in there. As long as that thing is blank. Oh, I took it out. Because if it's not blank, then we don't want to mess with this.
Right.
And so then here, I'm going to say, next, false. Incompatible types. It can't change a Boolean into text. And Kurt, you or somebody else might think, well, why'd you try to convert a Boolean? You just say false, but sometimes I misspell the word false. And because we originally created as a Boolean, now it's going to have a problem with it.
Can you just say blank? Can you just say blank and it'll the blank function?
Well, it's been typecast to a Boolean, but I can try that.
Yeah, try it. Just try it. There you go.
Kurt, you're not always right.
Nope.
When you are. Okay. Okay, so that should handle it. What else should we do here?
Well, did we actually get this thing done? What? Go to our specs here. Go to our requirement sheet here, or specification sheet. There's another rule that we have in programming too. And it's called if you're finished, you're never finished. So if it works, keep working on it until it doesn't work, and then.
Well, what I think about whenever you get excited, like, oh, it's pretty much done,
Yeah.
Key emphasis pretty much, which means actually not, because you might have a project manager, your boss, like, hey, when are you gonna be done? When are you gonna be done? All right, I did it. I got all the features are in there. And then you send them the link and it's like, no, there's a bug. You haven't, you need to run through it a few times to make sure there's.
Okay, so what I would like us to do, if we can, so I'd like us to go over the deep linking, and I mean I'm talking step through through your deep linking, because it's kind of cool how this low code. You notice we got this done with no code, right, guys? You saw that, right? There's no code here, none. We got this low code, no code environment here. They're not lying when they say that, because I guess you can produce a screen without that, but it's not going to do a lot. If you're going to make this thing work and really see, you got to do some code. And so I just feel like there's probably some people watching this that would really like to understand this deep linking a little better than because we've kind of just gone over it,
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
So deep linking always starts with a link,
a
URL.
Yep.
And whenever I do deep linking, I'm sending out an email with the link in it. It doesn't have to be done that way. It just happens to be the way it always happens for me. So I'm going to go back into the code. In Canvas apps, I would say that it's not no code. I think the model driven, you could get away with saying that's no code, but Canvas apps, even if you're using forms and you say submit form,
that's some code.
That's low code. It's a little bit of code.
You got low code then, right? So maybe model driven is no code. Canvas is low code, but then real programming, you're going to be coding
a lot of code. All right. So it starts right here with the send mail. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we have app URL. That's a link back to the app. And guys, this is true for any web language where you can, like, you're working in PHP, .NET, ASP.NET, all kinds of stuff. If you want to pass in a parameter into a page, you can do so in the URL. I mean, you go to any website and you start seeing a bunch of stuff up here.
Right.
Hold
on right there, real quick. Before you go there, look up there at the top where that you were at with that URL. When you talk about the app, your app URL, when you said that first variable that you had set in your code, could you? Okay, so that's your actual URL that's actually going to your app right now. That whole URL. So a lot of people may not understand that, but you're living in a browser, which means every little screen that you're seeing has a URL mapped to it. Okay, so that URL goes to the app that you're working with right now. I just want to make sure everybody's understanding that. That whole line up there is an address to your app. Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing you want to look for is the question mark. The question mark is what starts all the. I'm going to break out of that. Zoom it. Yep. The question mark. Everything after the question mark are all parameters. Now it doesn't mean that every website, every web page you go is going to have parameters, but it could. Okay. And I do see Code Assassin says clear the param after it's been used. I would love to do that. I don't think that you can reset it. So if you know how to do that, Code Assassin, let me know. I would like to do that over using a global variable to keep track of that. That would be cleaner. So here, and then all of the parameters, you can pass more than one parameter. those will be separated with the ampersand. Okay,
So,
so
that
there's
first
an app.
parameter, that first parameter says edit. That must be like if you're creating, you're either editing or you're running it, right? In run mode, right? Probably.
Possibly.
It's letting you know that you're in edit mode there.
And then right after the ampersand, we've got an app ID. Okay. And then so it's got some parameters there. If I go over to the second tab and look at this, okay, we've got probably, see that E? And this is a different way of doing params. You could have these little slashes. So there's probably a parameter called E for environment. And then there's A for app. And there's a GUID. Then you have the tenant ID. So there's another GUID. Then we have a
Okay, I see what you're
hint.
talking about the E and the A. I see that by itself. Okay.
Yeah. Then we have a hint on the second line. And then we have a source time. Okay. And then we add one to it whenever we send out that email. Okay.
You're just
So we added
adding-
request ID.
You're just adding. See that ampersand there? You're just adding. That ampersand just means you're putting it on the end of it. You're tacking it on the end of it there.
Mm-hmm. That first ampersand, right?
Yep. And you're just creating another parameter.
Yeah. And just taking a look at the comments down here. So Tony says the first param starts with question mark. That's
Yep,
true.
That's right.
And then code assessing, you did it making it blank.
That's the reset thing that he was talking about.
Well, I don't think that I did that though. If you look at the screen on visible, I made this global variable blank. Now we can, I believe the params function is more like a read-only thing. Like we can't set it at this point. We're already in the app and we use params to get at those arguments in the URL. You know what I mean? If there's a way to reset that so it doesn't have anything in it anymore, that would be sort of nice. If you set your param variable on start, then make it blank after. So you're saying take that param value, put it into a global, and then set the global to blank. Yeah, I just I try to stay away from the app start because I think eventually they're going to take it away from us.
No, I think that's what he's actually saying to do. If you look what you did up here at the beginning, that first setup there at the top, you're actually setting that deep link. You're setting that global variable, and then you're using it.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of that, you're setting it to blank. And I think that's essentially doing the same thing, right? You're doing it actually, I believe.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Now, is there anything else that you guys would like to see?
I guess I wanted to make another comment on this deep linking for people. So,
Okay.
So you can actually, by that last, could you go to the place where you were tacking on the very end of that?
Can you give me more specifics of what you're talking about?
The very end, where you were doing the email, in your email where you were collecting that, you were adding on to the request ID right there at the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
So notice he's getting very, very specific within this deep link, this URL. Think about this URL. It's a big old URL. It's going to your Power App application. Then it's going to the email, and it's going to the specific request ID that you have in your table. Consider having a gallery that has a bunch of names in it that's on another page. You could conceivably get specifically to the gallery, to a selected name inside of a gallery using this deep linking from another page. Actually, from another program, actually, that you got from another app. So you can actually map your, you might be in one application and you set a name, and you could jump over to another application, go into the gallery, and have that default right there, and select the name that you needed to get to, that you selected in the other app. Hopefully, I'm making sense. I can't talk this morning. I'm sorry, guys. But the point I'm trying to make in this is that with this deep linking, you can get very specific to go to a specific spot, in your URL. And I don't know if people really. play it. You know what? I think I'm going to do some challenge exercises for people to be able to get really good at that, because I think that's kind of slick, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, don't go off and make a program better than mine, though.
No, maybe not specifically with this one, but just using deep linking and practicing that deep linking, because I think that's a really powerful thing with this browser.
It is. Yeah, because sometimes people are concerned that, I've got 30 screens here and each screen's got 200 controls and I'm worried about it being sluggish. Okay, we could break it down into separate apps and you could do a lot of what you're talking about there. Now, what you would use is the launch function to launch, like, let's say, another tab with that URL to a different app.
Yep.
Or you could be launching into the same app, just a new tab.
Yep. So instead of navigate, you could do a launch. You go to a whole nother screen with it. Yeah,
you could.
But the coolest thing is that you can get right down to that minuscule item that you're trying to get to. Okay. Yeah.
If you look at YouTube, do a search for Darren Neeson launch. I talk about all the different parameters that you can pass in there. That might be so if you guys are interested in that, you might want to take a look at that.
Absolutely.
And there's another parameter where you could say what the target is. So this is a part of the HTML specification. You could link to something within the same window, or you can open up a new tab or a new window. So I go through all that stuff in the launch function video that I have.
Good deal. Well, hopefully we didn't make anything more complicated by trying to explain it.
Cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You can recover Kurt from his.
I don't know. I have to sprinkle in the humor every once in a while.
I don't even understand that. Okay.
Guys, how could we build onto this application and make it even more interesting here? So I've got some ideas of nice to haves, because this communication log was so important to the people attending the workshop. I made that almost like a must have, but here we have email integration. So we got reminders, email templates. Okay. We could have email templates. We could have grouping of users. Karen, Patty, what do you think? How are you guys going to extend this and use this in your own practical world?
I am going to need approval types.
Okay.
Like Kurt was talking about earlier.
Okay. So can you give me like one or two examples of a different approval type?
I'm going to need first it goes to the employee to sign an acknowledgement, and then it goes to a reconciler to approve it. And then it goes from the reconciler to the executive approver.
Okay.
The same thing for me. Very similar in the different levels of approvers, right? So maybe by department or group, then maybe go into accounts payable or,
Okay. Yeah, maybe an employee comes there and does a request like, hey, I need a laptop. Well, in order for a big purchase like that, maybe there's a specific workflow type, and then the manager could kick it off, and it goes to the employee. Then they have to acknowledge certain things, and then it goes through that process you guys were just describing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it.
Nice.
Okay. So if we were to, one thing we could do maybe with that is we could wire in a middle database table sitting there saying, maybe having the different people, like, so if you have a approval type, map that type to the people. So you would have a collection of people with the same type ID. And then that would automatically, all those would have to have some kind of action in that approval step.
All right, so we're going to have mess that up. Unique identifier. And then of course we'll have a name. So we're going to create, we're not going to use any type of choice fields, right? We're going to go in here
Oh
and
boy, you better not.
not after releasing that video I did,
Can
right?
you imagine if you use that right now? Oh my goodness. People would be shaming you. Oh,
Okay. So for approval types, we've got a name. Do we want a description or anything else in here?
I mean, probably not. You probably don't need that. It's real simple, isn't it? So for now, let's just keep it simple.
Yeah.
You got the name, you got the approval code, you got your approval type. That's your ID.
Okay.
Okay.
I wish it wouldn't do that. That bugs me.
Isn't it something?
It does a
Yeah.
word wrap right there.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me just want to go over here and say, okay, int, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
All right. What other changes to our database schema?
So then we need to have I'm trying to think of how we call this approval. I guess approval people, approval managers, approval what do you want to call these Karen and Patty? What would you call these people that have to be I can't think.
Gatekeepers.
They're gatekeepers. We could
Well, that
just
go Ghostbusters. I'm the key master. Are you the gatekeeper?
well, maybe we just call them controllers. Maybe just for a lack of
Controllers. Okay.
yeah.
And we'd have a one-to-many relationship between approval type and approvers.
Yep.
Mhm. Mhm.
Approvers.
Okay.
That's what we call it. Approvers.
Yeah.
I like it.
Approvers. And really, we've got a many-to-many relationship between app user and approval type with the
Yeah,
approvers being in the middle, right?
You could have, well, you could actually have the app user actually be an approver. You could actually add that. Just have that approvers going over there, getting all the information from the app user. Like you can get their name and email and all that stuff from there. So just have it mapped over there to app user.
App user lookup, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I'll have this go over to here,
Yep.
many to one.
Yep.
Because many users, like one user could be a part of many approval types,
Yep.
and you could have several approval types that would be many users.
Yep.
And so in approvers, we probably need, okay, so we need the approval type,
Yeah.
and that will be a lookup. So I need to say lookup here. Just to have it make sense in our,
That's correct. That's good.
and there probably needs to be an order, right? Patty and Karen, like you might want it to start off with somebody and then go down the,
Mhm.
in a
Yep.
certain order.
Exactly.
So let's add in approval order. Okay. Something bothering you, Kurt?
Just thinking that through, I almost wanted to have a mapping table between approval type and approvers, but maybe not. Maybe we don't need it. Have approval order, approval, because you can have one type to many approvers and many approvers to one type, or many types to one approver. No, it's the same. It's the same. You're good. I think you're good there. Yeah.
Then we would need admin screens to actually manage all this data.
Need a CRUD screen. But you also need, before you do that, we're going to have to wire the type to your request now, right? So your request that you have currently going on over there needs to be mapped over to the approval type, right?
Yeah, we could have it like a general. Okay, we could say approval type lookup. Why did it put it over here? I must have put that out. It needs to be over here in requests.
Approval type lookup. Approval type lookup. Yep. Right. And then that would work for, so that way, the way you've got it set up right now to where you could have a flexible one, it would still work. Let's say you have an approval type of 0. Now you can just use any order that you've got going on. And if you wire in an approval type, if it has a number, now you're going to have to go through the steps. It's going to bring those people in automatically. That way you can have both.
All right. I like it.
That's about all we need, isn't it? Wired up.
So
Yeah. You know, I think the biggest question at this point is what video are you going to watch next?
Okay.
And YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, got to hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video. But you probably don't.